Hi everyone, McBeard here, back with Gwent. It is patch 5.1, Season of Love. A lot of changes came into the game, which is normal for Gwent when patches come in. They don't come in softly. Usually, thank you so much for the sub.
Hope we never see the gnome again. Cheers.
Darnak with the resub here, not a fan of Percival. So, yeah, this is not a small patch. They usually aren't. This one's about as loud as they get. This is there's a lot of stuff that has changed here. So the most interesting stuff seems to be starting with the balance changes. I don't think that you'll lose less ranks, and it looks like there's a couple of changes with the way crimes resolve when you play them, but really, we're looking at the big list. And you've seen this stuff before, right? You've tuned into enough Gwent patch notes to know that this is going to be like Royal Decree. He's got the whole scroll here. We got to talk about a lot of stuff. So, Adrenaline Rush. You can no longer give resilience to a unit with this card. There are still units with resilience in the game, so that's not a problem. But apparently, Adrenaline Rush was. So Adrenaline Rush was an overcosted card that didn't see very much play at all. And I guess when it did see play, it wasn't healthy for the game. So as opposed to doing something like giving a unit resilience and boosting it, something that would make it far less dead and continue to provide the same effect, but actually have it be a point positive play and not an extreme problem adding it to your deck, they chose to remove it from the game. And now, what Adrenaline Rush does is boost an allied unit by 8 if there are no other units on that row, and it's a 5 provision card. It is still an organic card. Okay. So, yeah, it's an organic card. So this is still something that can be tutored by Wispus in Monsters. But, you know, it's interesting, right? A Magni Magnet. That's good. I like that. It's an interesting change, but Adrenaline Rush dies for it. Epidemic is now a 5 provision point card that destroys a 4 provision cost unit. I don't understand this one. I don't understand anything about this. I don't understand why Epidemic had to go. And I also don't understand why the new Epidemic had to be so terrible. It's also not an organic card. This card just seems like an awful card that I just don't know why I would play this when I could just play, like, I could play the new and improved Rock Barrage, which is now 5 provisions, thank goodness. Now, this is a card I will play that they changed, but they didn't change it, they just made it better. So here's Adrenaline Rush here. Boost an allied unit by 8 if there's no units on that row, and then Epidemic, destroy a 4 provision cost unit. This card is just an awful card, and this card might see play. Rock Barrage, while I'm in here, is cheaper now, which is pretty cool, because I think there's a lot of application for this card, and they buffed all row moving. So I hope if there's Dragon's Dream out there, I'm probably not going to play very much this month, because it looks like Dragon's Dream is coming back. They buffed Nivellin, they buffed Dragon's Dream, they buffed Rock Barrage, so I'm worried about Dragon's Dream. All right, so I'm going to get this out of the way now. I think that moving abilities from one card to another card, I think we should be done with this. It's so exhausting. So Imlerith is a different card. Again, Nithril is the card that Imlerith used to be. Nithril is now Imlerith. He has the on-order melee damage unit by 1 with the dominance effect of damaging the unit by 2 instead. Ruh! All right, so Imlerith is a brand new card, everybody. It's a brand new. It's a bomb. This is like a bomb, kind of like how Oak is, right? This is like a really interesting card. This is a really, really interesting card because it's almost a reset, but still, this card should never really be dead or bad ever. This card is a super interesting card, and this is probably, like, if we're highlighting the changes that I'm I'm really, really into, it's a change like this. Now, they could have made a new monster card that did this or whatever, but what I will say, now that I've said what I had to say about Nithril and the name change, what I will say is that this effect is what I would imagine a card and a character like Imlerith, the gravity and the strength of a card like Imlerith should show. He's a brick shithouse, this guy. So he's a 7 strength unit that sets an allied unit's power to 7. Cool. Great for Thrive. It sets an allied unit to 7, so he's dropping for 13 if you can control it. Dominance, you can set any unit's power to 7 instead. Now, why would you want to set a different unit's power to 7? Well, maybe the unit is like at 30 and you need to do that. There are some situations where the value will be in favor of doing it on your opponent's side of the board, and it also means that you would be able to swing the dominance in your favor because now Imlerith would be tied with the strongest unit on your opponent's board. This seems much less important than dropping him for points, but I think that it really feels like, hi, I'm a Wild Hunt card. I care about dominance. I'm a big card, and I'm a good monsters card. I think that this is just good. It's a good card, right? It was better when he dueled? Well, yeah, I mean, obviously the golden age of the game was just conceding every game that you did draw Mandrake, right? That's the best game ever. Seems good, right? B for B. Nick Greek Freak, how you doing? I see you. What's up? Pio Lunovsky. Iron Defender, how you doing? Thanks everybody stopping by. I'm doing a lot of talking, not a lot of chatting, like talking about the patch. But I really appreciate you guys coming out. I see a lot of people showing up for Gwent on patch day. So then there's Imlerith's Wrath, which is a new card too. Because now you're encouraged to play Imlerith perhaps earlier than last say. And if you do that and you're running Imlerith Wrath, which you can't tutor in the monsters deck, it's not an organic card. Maybe it would be weird if it was, but it's an untutorable special that requires a combo, and I don't like it. But it's a gold card, so Nagafar can get it. Anyway, damage an enemy unit by the power of your highest allied unit. If you control Imlerith, destroy the enemy outright. So there's that. But there are also changes to Wild Hunt. Now, Gels did not get any different Wild Hunt changes at all. Neither did Caranthir, which is fine. The Wild Hunt Rider is fine, but he works with Dominance anyway. The Wild Hunt Navigator is also a Dominance unit as well. And now we have the Wild Hunt Hound that basically boosts itself. This is a good card, right? This is just an engine that is an unconditional boosting engine. So going first is good for monsters. It's good here, and it's good here. So there is that change. And Wild Hunt Warrior is now a 4P card. 3 strength, damage an enemy unit by 1. Dominance, damage it by 3 instead. So you're going to see... Now, while this is a difference, it is kind of too bad. It's like you can kind of see where how these changes are happening. All right, my buddy Soul Sailor just got me a much better website to look at. We're on Gwent.1, and this is a much better visual way to look at this stuff, and I prefer to do this. So I'm actually going to start over here. We can see most of the visual changes here. These are the big changes that are worth talking about. So Avalok's nerf, I'm not a fan of, because I really like this card. Becker's Rock Slide, I think, is better. I think you want to have these breakpoints a little bit more accessible. 8 is almost unconditional removal in a lot of cases, but it is obviously conditional. But for the most part, if you absolutely need to remove something, 8 should be good enough. Commander's Horn seems playable now. It's 10 boost for 9. Count Caldwell, I don't think sees any more play. I think Decoy could have possibly seen play, but I think losing the tactic tag actually hurts any chances that this is probably only Nilfgaard who could control that top card would really want to use that. Dorgray is a bit more attractive now. And then here we see the Dragon's Dream. We see the buff to movement. Movement getting buffed in Dragon's Dream and Nivellin. Due to getting the base copy transform is now 2 provision points cheaper. Fisher King and the other associated card, Traveling Merchant, buffed, but I'm not really sure why. But Decoy looks better in general. These all seem like Decoy buffs somehow. I guess they wanted that iconic card to come back. Gontaro Dim now and Moral are equals at 10 provisions. Gimpy Gerwin, probably not going to see any more play, but still more provisions. Sarah and Johnny both got buffed in strength from 3 to 4. Lady of the Lake is a little bit better now. Good protection. There's morale. Marigold's Hailstorm. Now, again, just kind of like Commander's Horn is going to get a little bit... Seems like it's okay. Seems like it makes a lot of sense to consider it if you need to deal with swarm tactics, if you don't want to use Lambert, or if you don't want that condition of Lambert. And then we have stuff like Nivellen there. Again, Nivellen's a little bit stronger now. Olgierd's a little bit cheaper. Radia is more expensive. This is... I'm glad they didn't change it too much because I still think you could build a deck around this card. She's still very strong. She's still worth 13 provisions like on a bad day. I think she's really, really strong. And I think we're going to still see her out there, but she's far less attractive at 12. There's the Sarah change. Skellige Storm buffed. A little bit cheaper now. Wolfsbane a little bit cheaper, but weird. Adrenaline Rush is a brand new card. We talked about that already. We talked about all these other changes, I think, to an extent that I can move on. So I'm going to skip through most of the monster stuff because we looked at it in the deck builder, but it's just a little bit more visual here. But we can move on to Nilfgaard, I think, now. And we can see this in a much more... I like this. This is a great sight. This is a great sight. I'm surprised I never saw this. So Double Cross is buffed, and Enslave... Wait, yeah, Double Cross is buffed and Enslave is nerfed. So... I mean, was Enslave that good? I think it's good, but was it okay. I mean, I'm surprised. Double Cross is probably... It's weird. Like, it's hardly about the provision cost, and it's more about the ability. But it's not like Double Cross was a bad ability. It's just that you wouldn't play it over Enslave, and now you would. I think that's probably the biggest difference. Albrecht gets a buff in strength. I'm surprised. I think this card's pretty good. I think this card's very good now. It's just not as slow a play, really. And was already seeing play in some decks. I think you could realistically put it in. False Siri, no more artifact removal, by the way. This is another massive change. Another massive change that we haven't really talked about at all yet, but artifact removal is once again nerfed. Again. So, again. Now they're hitting the gold cards. False Siri no longer destroys an enemy artifact, but instead does something I think we can all argue is as valuable. And that's boosting an agent by 3. Kappa. Serret is cheaper. That's cool because I think that the Serret Ox Letho combo, it wasn't really worth it, but it wasn't terrible. And Trahearn nerfed in strength, but is now 6 provisions again. This change, I gotta say, has to be the most bewildering change in the entire patch notes. That they actually made Trahearn, who has been nerfed twice before, they brought him back down to 6. I cannot believe this. And I have a bad feeling about it. It's ominous. It's ominous. It's also interesting that the buffs and the nerfs and the side grades are all colored here. But I don't know if they could get a brighter green for this one. I don't know if they have another color, because this doesn't seem to be the same as the Serret buff. Morlehelm's Cupbearer nerfed. I mean, this card's everywhere. Poison's super strong. And Vincent van Morlehelm nerfed, who, I mean, it was a strong card, but it wasn't seeing, like, a ton of play. I felt like it was seeing enough play to, like, justify it. Vincent still busted? Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong about Vincent, if you think that. You've already run into Trahearn twice. Oh, I'm so excited. All right. Mobilization, a slight nerf. The boost is now down from 3 to 2. Pincer Maneuver, not a slight nerf. They just took this card behind the shed. Gurnacora, almost. Pincer Maneuver now 12 provisions. This is a huge nerf and hard to get over for people who like it, but I'm okay with it. I am fine with this nerf. I thought it was going to go to 13. I've been on record saying that Pincer Maneuver, I felt, is so incredibly pushed. The idea of drawing any card out of your deck in a turn that you're playing 2 cards. The idea that is a competitively priced ability, just over time just seemed more and more ridiculous. So, all right with me. Vicious Slash gets a buff in provisions. Kira Metz gets a buff. All right. This card was good when it was good. And she got nerfed. She used to be 6 strength for 10 provisions. And then she was 5 strength for 10 provisions. All of a sudden, everybody dropped her. But there are other reasons as well. The meta changes drastically as well. But now she's, I might play with my girl Kira. I might play with her. Odrin, a little bit cheaper now. Philippa, a little bit more expensive now. It's interesting. I used to think this card was actually underpowered when it came out. I disagree with that statement now, but I am not crazy about this nerf. I'm not crazy about the nerf. I thought that she was appropriately priced at 11. But play rate, right? Play rate. It looks good. It looks too good to them. Heir to the Adept has now a condition on her Zeal. Parabolista, this is just a tooltip change. I don't really see the difference. Unless you can redeploy it somehow. Call of Harmony gets nerfed by 1 point. Deadeye Ambush gets a change. Now you just create an Elven Deadeye. I couldn't get that word out. You just create an Elven Deadeye. Enemy unit. Oh, yeah, damage a unit. Okay. So they did change. They hid that one. Now it actually can proc your own immortals and stuff like that, and your Kidweni cavalry and stuff you need to knock the shield off of. All right, Scoia'tael. So yeah, Call of Harmony, a little nerf, and Deadeye Ambush. So they really tried to make traps work, but now it's like, I mean, I would never play this ability because if you can't get the traps, you don't have a leader. Now, they just gave up on it, though. So, I guess that's probably... When they made this card, there was a lot of excitement. We wanted to make this a better thing. And now it's just make an elf. Mystic Echo takes a nerf down to 12. Now it's near pincer maneuver, so that's, okay. Mystic Echo further reduced. Barclay Elves buffed. Etriel nerfed. Feigned Death nerfed. Just in provisions. Merlagan nerfed. Pitfall Trap buffed. Treant Boar is slightly different now. You have Zeal if you control a Dryad, but otherwise it's the same card. Weeping Willow is nerfed just in provisions. That's fair. Yavin is now row-locked, kind of, in that he still is stupidly strong, but now it has to be on the row. So, not nerfed, really, as you can see. The changelog also doesn't think it's nerfed. This card getting buffed is super good. I love this buff, actually, Duel Lieutenant Bowman. So, my biggest takeaway here from the Scoia'tael changes is that elves are fine, and I don't like that, because I think elves were crazy. But I could be wrong. There's a bunch of other changes here that could have changed the deck a lot, and the meta could be wildly different now. So we'll have to see. Barclay was a nerf. Sorry, I should be looking at the colors a bit better. Yeah. Oh, on this row, but the strength went up. So let's talk about Skellige got a lot of buffs. So Reckless Fury ignores armor. This is old school, right? This is old school. This ability, or there was a Skellige ability like this that ignored armor before. I feel like this is a throwback. Sacrificial Vanguard is now buffed. It's just one more provision greater. Burn a Brand. Whoa, what a buff! This buff is crazy good. 8 provisions for draw 2, discard 2. That is good. That's a crazy buff. They must have really not seen this. I don't know. They must have just really, really wanted to give love to discard. Blue by Lugos is cheaper. That's kind of cool because this is already potentially seeing play. Coral is better. She's stronger now. Covenant of Steel starts with 2 armor, which is interesting. Obviously better than it used to be. Donar and Hindar, a nice buff here. 7 strength, or 7 provisions now. That's a great buff. The Giant Boar, they're considering this a side grade. So before, it just has another option now. So it used to boost itself by 1, but for every damage unit. But now, on range, it boosts self by the amount an enemy unit is damaged. So this is not a side grade, this is a buff. You actually have 2 ways to play this card, and it's a beast. And if you need, if you want beasts to be relevant at all, you're looking for more reasons to put beasts in your deck. So this means that if you have like old Spear Tip and you brought it to 1, you know, if you were, imagine Vincent and this being in the same faction, you brought it to 1, it means you could boost this by 11. So it's probably not great, but it's only a 7 provision card. There are probably some situations, like look at Ulfheiden. He will take an old Spear Tip or, you know, a young Spear Tip or something at 8 even, down to 4. So now this plays for 8. And Ulfheiden's also a beast, so there's some synergy there. It's a stretch. I don't know if you play this card, but I think that with it having 2 modes, it's certainly more playable. So shout out to my boy Darth Sebius. His card got buffed. Lippy, 2 strength on the buff. Lippy decks probably will see some play. You get a few more points on the decisive, on the, you know, that important Lippy turn. Morkvarg is cheaper than ever, so another discard buff. Sigvald gets buffed in strength. Skeal is a different card now. So we'll talk about Skeal here. Skeal, poor Skeal. This card has seen more changes, I think, than any card for a card that has had so many different iterations. Back in the day, this card and the card that the artwork that represents necromancy used to be a card. They were like the same card. You would play Skeal, and I can't even remember what would happen. But whatever that triggered, he would come back as Craven Reborn, and it was this card. He was a unit. He would come back from the dead because necromancy is Skeal in the artwork. If you've played Witcher 3, you know this. Really great use of the artwork in this scene with Yennefer and Geralt. So what I'm saying is, they used to have so many things that this card did, and he's been changed and changed and changed and changed. And now once again, Skeal is reborn. I mean, he's kind of like how Goliath used to be. Goliath used to be a 10 strength unit that took an extra 2 damage whenever he took damage. So you'd play him for big value, but if your opponent could interact with the card, Goliath was going to go down real fast. So Skeal now represents this card to me, because basically if you were to target Skeal with, I mean, if you target him with 1 Alzur's Thunder, he dies immediately. So that's obviously bad value. But nothing, right? This is the way it is. This is probably how he's going to be remembered, because I don't think you play him. You just have to play him like, yeah, you play him as a last say. You play him as a last say card because he's 10 strength. Your opponent isn't likely, the truth is, your opponent isn't likely going to hold on to stuff like Alzur's Thunder into round 3, and is probably going to use it on something else before you would even consider playing this card. Because there's no reason to play this card any earlier than you would have to play him. So for that reason, unless your opponent is expecting you to use this card, he's probably going to be fine on this day 1 or these early days. And he's resurrectable. Yeah, and he can resurrect too. Soul Sailor, very true. Good bleed as well. And also a good card for Hjalmar, if we're being honest. So actually this card isn't bad. This card is bad. Having him be in the graveyard, he's destined to go there, right? He's on the highway to the graveyard. He's on the expressway. Yeah, he actually might be okay. Hjalmar, okay. Skjalmar. Let's make Skellige Skjalmar. Oh, and now let's get into this change. Oh, baby, this change. This change. I don't know why this change is in yellow. This change is good. Yeah, it fits with the lore. No, it does. He's an exile, right? He's kind of a wimp. I mean, Morkvarg hands him his ass. He's not strong, but he talked a big game. All right, so Wild Boar of the Sea. This is cool. So as we know, Wild Boar of the Sea. I was playing around with Wild Boar of the Sea because I felt like it was pretty realistic that playing Corsairs and playing Croc on Crate, and I actually was getting value from this card. It was crushing. It was crushing. This card's better now, but it's also more expensive. So they made him a bit more expensive, but they also improved a lot of these cards. So it's arguable that this card maybe is side gradable. So on the melee row, you damage all damage enemy units by 1 and then damage all enemy units by 1. So all damage units take 1 extra point of damage. So all damaged units take 2 damaged, but also every other unit takes damage as well. Awesome. I think that's great. The Encrate Warcrier. Now this is another card that is been given the... This is very much like the Garcane or the Master of Disguise, you know, or the new, you know, Wild Hunt Hound. So this is looking like one of those cards. Does that make this a bad card? I don't think so. I think this is actually a super good card, and I'm playing with it. This card and Corsair, but this is a warrior, and Corsair cares about ships and is a pirate and stuff like that. So would I care about putting Corsair and this in the same deck, or would I actually be looking to build a warrior deck around this? Because there are a lot of cards that care about warriors, so we're going to have to go into the deck builder and check. Brockfar Hunter no longer holds charges, just has a reduced cooldown. So the much maligned Brockfar Hunter, another card with a very sad history, as my sad Thronebreaker music comes in. Brockfar Hunter used to be a card that was like, this card was crazy. This card did damage. This card cared about adjacent things getting hurt. This thing cared about being healed. It was crazy strong. It was the longship of its day, or the Haymay Protector of its day. And then it went to discard. Okay, maybe it found a new home in discard. No, after last patch they nerfed this card, and now arguably they nerfed it again, but for some reason they just wanted this to not be charge-based at all. Anyway, it's still fine because discard got a lot better, and it's possible that discard being improved was always in the cards, and they just wanted to make sure that you... I mean, they could have made this change. They could have made this change like with this patch, because Portal would be pretty good, I think, with this card. With this card and discard. Just so we're clear, I meant both. Demon Pirate Captain has an off mode. This is definitely a buff. It just means that it's not playing for 3 when you don't have Bloodthirst. But I was considering this anyway. But I actually think it's good for an off mode, because if it's not getting its extra value, at least it's contributing to Bloodthirst on the board, which is what you want your cards to do. You want to help your archetype out. So this is a great change. Haymay Scald this is a great change too. Now you draw the card first. This is good. This is a good change. Very, very, very good change. It may seem subtle, but this definitely makes a difference. This is why Eavesdrop is good, because you draw first. Because if Eavesdrop you didn't draw first and you had a hand that was really good and Eavesdrop was your only crime and you kind of got screwed into having your hand like that, you had to discard a good card to draw something shitty maybe? Savage Bear, finally, now gives bleeding instead of damage. But bleeding 2 is the order, not bleeding 1. So when I read the patch notes, it wasn't super clear. So this card is actually pretty strong, because it gives bleeding 2 on Zeal, so he plays for 6 all the time. So Beasts got some cool stuff. So the takeaway is that Beasts got some cool stuff, because Morkvarg is better, Giant Boar is better. Yeah, Morkvarg is better, Giant Boar is better. There's a bit more synergy, arguably, with Ulfheden with Giant Boar. And Savage Bear is a bit better as well. I think that Beasts as a deck definitely improve. I think Discard as a deck definitely improve. And I think that Pirates and Ships definitely improve. Donar is better. Yeah, it's good. These are huge buffs. There's really barely any nerfs. I would say no nerfs. Are there no nerfs? Skellige got no nerfs. No nerfs for Skellige. All right. Assassino, just save the decks for later. I'm going to get through these changes first. So Blood Money now damages the unit by 8 instead of 7, otherwise no change. But Congregate, ooh, let's talk about this change. Now, every time you spawn the Zealot, you gain a coin, as opposed to gaining 2 coins at the end. You still have 3 charges, so you actually get 1 more coin than you used to get, and this actually gives you reach early. So sometimes I like playing the Zealots early. Getting a benefit from them whenever you play them I think is great. And I mean, I just think it's a great change. I do think it's awesome. Jackpot, also boosted in provisions, now 16 provisions, and Off the Books also boosted in provisions, but Off the Books got some other cool stuff too. And Wildcard is nerfed, so this is just really it, right? They just wanted to make the other leaders a bit more attractive, and they made every leader more attractive except for Wildcard, which they nerfed. So Collusion gets buffed, great. I mean, it was just too expensive. I think it definitely needed to be a little bit cheaper or change, because it was a cool card. It's a cool card. I just think it was unplayable with its restriction, with its board state restriction and its cost. So it's a bit better now. Excommunication as well. This is interesting because I don't know if I would play this card, but I also don't know if it's bad either. So if you actually banish a Firesworn unit, you get to look at the top 3 cards in your deck and play one of those cards. So that's obviously much better, especially in the idea of Congregate, where you are playing a Firesworn with your leader ability, which means that the last Congregate charge can be any card of the top 3 cards in your deck, if you need it to be. I find that interesting. Hammond has changed now. Hammond no longer does its pirate-based thing with boosting. Now he moves an enemy unit and gives it bleeding, which is actually a great ability because movement is good. So it's a good ability with movement. And also the bleeding is increased with more pirates on the board. So Hammond cares less about ships and more about pirates, which is good. In general, I don't know if this is playable or very good, but I think if you need movement, now at least you have an option in Skellige that's not, I mean, did you have an option before? Yeah, it was Trophy Catch, right? So now you actually have another option. Nilfgaardian Justice, what a nerf! What a nerf. So it's interesting because I'm talking about Skellige again, right? Because the dual cards here are being covered in Skellige, so in Syndicate. So Nilfgaardian Justice, this is a massive nerf to Dwarf Scoia'tael, which I'm not upset about, because the only card that this really... There were 2 cards that this made extra strong, and that is Bare Knuckle Brawler. I couldn't remember the name of the card. Bare Knuckle Brawler and Dwarven Mercenary. So now, instead of getting a copy of that card, you now get... Now it's just a tutor that gives you Cleaver's Muscle as well. So if you like dwarves, this is still probably fine. But and the spawning occurs before you play the dwarf. So if you need a dwarf before maybe playing the Mahakam Guard, let's say, that means you get the 5 points and then you get the Mahakam Guard's ability. But Cleaver's Muscle, if you need a refresher, is a 5 strength dwarf with shield. I'm thinking about it because it also got buffed. It's now a 10-point card. So you don't have to squeeze this in as much as you used to if you wanted to play dwarves or if you wanted to play something else. But it's a good crime in that it's a tutor for a dwarf. You care more. It's better for crown splitters, I guess, because now it changes. It changes a lot of the way you can do this. And you play Furco as well. I don't know. And now let's talk about another change that I just don't understand. But Passiflora is gone. Passiflora is gone. Passiflora is it's new now. Now it's about blind eyes, and you get a whole new set of things, and it's an expensive card. It was cheap before, and it did a lot for its provisions, no doubt. It encouraged you to play the Sea Jackal and stuff like that you could really just kind of blow up to large things. And it was also a hard card to play because you really had to manage your money, which I liked. I liked that part about it. I felt like you really had to manage your finances with this card because you didn't want to overprofit. I really like that about this card, and that's gone in this card. So that aspect is gone, and even if that was the intention, I still think I don't like that it's gone. That being said, now we have a brand new card to talk about. The new passive flora now progresses whenever you play a blind eye. So I'm going to hop back into the deck builder here because I want to actually talk about the implications of this. Spawn. So first you play it and you get a Sly Seductress. So that's flavorful. And then you get Passive Flora Peaches. And that's flavorful. And then you get the money. So the flavor's on point. The flavor's on point. I just like the old card too. Maybe they'll bring back the old card in a future expansion, but... so let's talk about some Blind Eyes. So now we're looking at Blind Eye cards. Now Sly Seductress is a Blind Eyes, as is Passive Flora. So this all works together. Now when it says play a Blind Eye, does it mean, does Eavesdrop work with it? Does anybody know this yet? Seems like it wouldn't work, but maybe. Anyway, there's obviously a lot of things that are really awesome with this. There's a lot of great Blind Eye units. Like if you wanted to play this early on, you're now far more interested in playing something like Dodric to start cycling through your deck because it's just good, right? Sly Seductress and a Passive Flora Peaches are both important cards to get out there. And the Sly Seductress can also protect herself immediately. So being able to have coins before playing Scenario means you get to play the protective Sly Seductress. And then when you play a second Sly Seductress, you get to progress the scenario. So this is just, it's a wildly different card that actually probably gives a lot more love back into the Sly Seductress tactics of old. But also, you can progress this with Louisa. You can progress this with a lot of cards that you would just be happy to play offhand. So I think the card is good, and I think they had to nerf the provisions because it's much better than it was. Much better than it was. You can still watch out on the overprofit, but you can play this on a naked board and then just progress it, and then all of the cards, the Passive Flora Peaches is better. I don't know, it's cool. And then you get the money at the end after those ladies have done, they work their money makers. I'm cool with it overall, but I will miss the old Passive Flora because I like that card too. Procession of Penance now damages itself by 10, so you play it for 2. However, for each Firesworn Zealot you control, you reduce that damage by 2. Which means that now you need to control only 5 Firesworn Zealots to make this card not hurt itself. And when it doesn't hurt itself, it's 2 points better than it was. So it's definitely, I think, a buff to the archetype. Because once it's out, it's there. Just like Pugo when you cheat him out. He's there now. Doesn't matter that he's there. Doesn't matter you can remove with tall removal. It's not like you can you get your value by hurting it a bit or whatever, or removing the Firesworn later. So it actually puts removal. It actually puts removal priority on these little weenies, which is a good thing. That Lambert might actually be worth running because I think the Procession of Penance. I think that Firesworn got a lot of buffs. It's backwards. Everyone has watched Scarface knows first you get the money, then you get the power. Then you get that way, man. That's the quote, right? Siggy Rubin gets the buff here. Cheaper than ever. Back down to 12. Now, he was nerfed and now he's buffed, right? Because he was 12 before and played. Or was he 4 points before and played? But I'm pretty sure they just brought him back down. They just brought him back down to pre-nerf. Say what you want about card games. I can't think of any card game that puts cards into a pre-nerf state this regularly. We're talking pre-nerf. I think that's right. Tunnel Drill. This is another artifact destruction. No longer does Tunnel Drill remove artifacts. No longer. Now it cares about Crown Splitters. So that means that once you've made a lot of money and you've got a lot of Crown Splitters, you send the Tunnel Drill in, and this is interesting because there's no cooldown on Tunnel Drill. Oh, adjacent. Sorry, adjacent. So 2 adjacent Crown Splitters. You can spend 9 coins for 9 damage. So maybe they're trying to make gangs care about more stuff. Now here's a buff. Horson Senior has now 8 provisions. This is crazy strong. Arena Ghoul. So in the buff to off the books, Arena Ghoul is also buffed because the tribute is now 1, which means that you can play, if you're playing King of Beggars off the books, which is if you're playing off the books, you are playing Arena Ghoul for an unconditional 7 points, Nilfgaardian Knight with no drawback, Ardfane Tortoise with no drawback. The only drawback is that you're playing off the books and you're supposed to be getting your values somewhere, but you're getting it here. Wow, this card is 4 provisions now? This card used to be 6 provisions. This is a crazy buff, right? This is a buff, man. Wow. 4 provisions for 6 zealots? That's strong. That is strong. Eventide Plunder now you gain 4 coins, but doesn't destroy an artifact. Now, if your opponent has an artifact, you gain 6 coins. So Swindle gives you 3 to 5 coins, but Eventide Plunder gives you 4 coins all the time for the same provision, with a potential upside. It seems balanced with Swindle, but it's just, artifact destruction. No longer are we stopping artifacts. Finally, the last thing we're going to talk about is Fistek Trafficker. Fistek Trafficker is buffed. You're playing him for the same reason, but you buffed it. In a world where poison is nerfed, Fistek Trafficker is buffed. And Temple Guard is buffed. Now, worth it at 3 strength. A little bit more worth it. All right, so that's the whole thing. So this was a review brought to you by Gwent.1. This is awesome. Thanks for the link, Soul Sailor. This made it really easy to follow along and really easy to look at it all. Oh, I'm playing game. Yeah, I'm gonna play a game. I've been talking for an hour. Yeah. No, we're gonna play some games now. Let's get into some games.